Hey there, Emma here, and in 2023 I hosted a painting challenge called Dogtober where we painted a different dog breed every day of the month. You may have seen some of the clips that I posted on Shorts at the time, just showing like a few little clips from each painting, but I've decided to go and pull out the real-time footage and share them this year so you can follow along if you'd like to. A couple of disclaimers/explainers. The point of the challenge for me was that I wanted to try and loosen up. I'm a realistic portrait artist, and so I gave myself a smaller size to work with as well as a time frame. I'm painting on roughly about A6 size paper, which is pretty small. In terms of measurements, that's like roughly 10.5 centimeters by 14.8 centimeters or 4.1 by 5.8 inches. And I also tried to set myself a time limit of about 15 minutes. I really wanted to challenge myself to loosen up, but you can approach this any way you like. Maybe you'll do it in a different medium or a certain color palette. The options are endless, totally up to you, but you're more than welcome to follow along, and these are kind of like mini tutorials. I do want to point out though that as this was unusual for me and a challenge to me, not all of them are that good. I really struggled in the beginning to start loosening up, and particularly struggled with the long-haired dogs. But you know, it's an adventure and you'll see me progress through the month and learn a lot. If you want to grab the outline sketches, I have put all 31 sketches into a document, a PDF that you can download from my website. I will link that in the description. You'll just need to pop your email address in, which will sign you up to my mailing list, but then you'll get the document with all 31 outline sketches, roughly about the same size that I'm painting. You're more than welcome to print them, trace them, size them up or down if you need to. I'll be working with my usual set of supplies and mixing colors as well, but I will talk you through the process as we go. Let's jump in. Day 27, and we are painting a schnauzer. I have a lot of color already on my palette that I'm going to reuse, but I'll talk you through how to make that for yourself. So we really need some kind of gray color, and the way that I mix a gray or a black and then water down to a gray is with the 3 primary colors. You might find more success mixing all 3 primary colors together at the same time, or you might find more success making a brown and then neutralizing that. So usually what I end up doing is mixing yellow and red together to make an orange, and then I'll start slowly adding in some blue. My mixture always turns a bit green, which means there needs to be more red in it to cancel out. So I'll just adjust until I get this beautiful, dirty, dark blue color. And I like mine to look a little bit more like a bluey or a purpley tinge rather than just a flat black or gray. I think it's just a little bit more interesting. So I've got my color ready to go, and I'm going to go in and pop that straight on the top of the folded over ear. We have quite a, well, it's not super long haired dog, but it's like wiry fur, and we do want to make it look like it's got texture in its fur. So when I am at the edge of the dog, I'm doing these kind of jagged strokes out to the side. So I've got the ear, and that's the darkest, and then I've painted this kind of like underside of the ear on the left of it, and I've left a gap between it. Same with on the right, I've taken a little bit over the top of the head, left a gap between the ear, and just roughly taken it around that whole edge at this point. Now what I want to do is transition into some more watery color. So I added a little bit of water under the ear, and now I'm back in the darker color to take it down this body. So just very roughly pulling that out to the side. I'm trying to keep my edges damp on everything in the middle here as well, because we don't want it to dry with a crust. And I've taken more water around the side of the face and like onto the neck region, back into some color to meet it under the chin and on the back. I'm just trying to give it this beautiful watery flow. I'm keeping it nice and dark on the chest, taking that down towards the bottom of the painting, where we are going to then flick to some more watery color for the feet so they stand out. Flicking lots of strokes out to the side as I go. We want to make it look like curly fur, rough fur without too much effort. So filling in the rest of the body with this darker color, and you can see just that beautiful transition of the water into the darker color. Now as we get down here, I'm stepping back into some watery color, and we are going to connect up the little feet, and that's just going to give us these beautiful white, little fluffy, soft feet. Now I've left the edges hard at the top around the eyebrow because I know that I have to paint that in super dark later anyway, so it doesn't matter if I'm going to get a harsh edge there. Just popped a little bit of watery colour on the very bottom of these feet just to give it a bit of a shadow, look like the paw pads. And now I'm going into that eyebrow region up the top. So we've got this bit of eyebrow fluff that kind of like comes up and over, but I want to put the shadow underneath it first and around the eye. So I'm flicking some fur up and out from like the bridge of the nose. Dipping back into some water to take this down the snout. Just a little bit. We're going to fill in like the actual fur, like the big cool mustache that they have later on. Dropping a little bit more colour around this ear, creating a bit of a shadow. Bit more around the eye, really deepening it up in there and letting that white eyebrow that's kind of like overhanging it, let that stand out more. And we can dry that all off. So we've got a bulk of the work done now, which is nice. I'm going to go into some dark colour with a smaller brush, a size 6, and start doing some like curly chest fur. I just wanted to add a little bit more texture into this area. If you wanted to keep it soft, you're more than welcome to. But I'm just going to strategically pick a couple of spots that I want this thick curly fur in. So I'm starting under the chest, and then I'm going to water my brush off and fade that colour out. So big loose strokes, flicking out and around, and then I'm going to swap into some water and just kind of dab at the edges of them to let that just float down in there and kind of disappear. I want to do a similar thing on the side of its leg, a little bit lighter in colour, taking that down the edge and then flicking into some water to do the same thing along all the edges and let it float out in a soft way. Just dragging a little bit of colour down the very bottom of the paws, but not trying to cover up every little bit of colour I already did. We're just trying to deepen it in a little couple spots. Flicking some darker fur up under that fluffy eyebrow and taking that around the eye with some water, just making that softly blend out. Little bit of rough fur stroke along the edge of the ear and underneath it, soften that darker shadow I placed in. Dipping into some Mars Black, and I'm going to paint the nostrils in. So a little tiny one on the right because we can't see much of it, but we can do a bigger one here on the left that's looking side on at us, and a little split down the center, and then taking that off into 2 little points for the opening of the mouth. I'm getting some red on my palette and some yellow. I want to make a bit of a brown color we need to paint the eye in. So I'm just going to mix the orange in with the blue color that's on my palette, and as you can see, get a nice brown. It is quite watery. I go over this eye like 3 times, but popping the little eye in, leaving a little gap around kind of like the inner corner outer edges. I'm cheating and adding some black into this mixture because it wasn't dark enough. Just dabbing that on there. It looks really dark, but it was just blobbed on. So I'm just going to have to dry that off and redo it a couple times. So straight back in. Drying it off. I'm just going to put some more on there again. Dipping into some black and just shoving that in another bunch of this grey colour to the side, and I'm going to use this to paint the nose in. So starting with a little V shape at the bottom, then we're going to rinse off, dab off and invite that colour up and around, keeping that watery at the top so it looks highlighted. And drying that all off. Back into that colour, I went over it a 4th time on the eye, there you go. And now I want to just add a bit more yellow back into this mixture, a bit more red, make it a bit more of a lighter brown colour. I just wanted a different, like a warmer type of colour to use for all the fur on like the mustache. So I've just put this orangey colour into the mixture. I'm really watering my brush off though. I just wanted it to be a warmer shade, but I still wanted it to look kind of grey. So I'm just kind of grabbing a very small amount of that colour, mixing it in with grey. Very, very watery. And I'm going to do these big, long, sweeping mustache strokes, starting on the far side. So just putting a bit of colour down. It was a bit much, so I dabbed my brush off. And then we're just going to start doing these big sweeping strokes downwards. And it's just going to make this area stand out a little bit more against all the cooler fur. These big, long strokes. I absolutely love the style of the cut they give schnauzers. I think it's so cute. They just look like old men. I love them. It's got this big kind of horseshoe looking situation going on here. It's all curved at the top and then comes down to some points. I don't want to fill this whole gap in, so I'm just kind of taking some jagged strokes up along the edge and letting that kind of disappear away into the white. A little bit of colour on the top left of the nose and a little bit under the fur, just so it's not going to be too stark there, but leaving lots of white gaps in between everything. Really make that shine. A bit more colour, and I'm going to add that just under the mouth and blend that out a bit. A little bit on the far side, darkening that up. Same on the left, just lots of strokes, leaving gaps in between. Just trying to shade it, not cover everything up exactly. And popping some of this colour in the lighter white eyebrow fur as well. Rinsing off, dipping into some grey colour, and just going to flick a few more strokes of fur up in that eyebrow shadow. A little bit on top of the snout as well. Just kind of flicking that down and around. Watering off my brush to do that a bit lightly. Blend it in. Just darkening the top of that snout, flicking fur out to the edge, and deepening around the eye. Underneath it, flicking that down, just blending it all out now, keeping that nice and soft on top of the snout. Back into some more warmer grey colour and just a little bit more under that mouth. And under the nose. Darkening up some of those longer bits of fur on the mustache. Now I'm going to grab my detail brush because we are going to do the eye highlight. So dipping into some concentrated white. And I'm just going to take that across the top of the eye, a couple little dabs. So just dotting that in the top half of the eye. I'm dipping into some black and taking that into my brown, like my warm orangey brown on the palette. I'm just going to deepen up underneath the eye. I'm not touching the eye highlight. I'm just making the eye darker underneath it. And then we're going to dry that all off, and that is our cute little schnauzer. So I really like this one. I think I captured the looseness, and I'll see you in the next one.